Hi, everyone. As you're likely aware, in the second half of the semester, we're going to be focusing on the formal report group project. Now, so far, we have met with our teammates and we've discussed some ideas about a target company and a problem that that company faces. So, the project, the formal report we'll be writing, will address that specific problem and will result in a series of recommendations. So far, as I mentioned, we've identified the target company and the problem. Now it's time for us to devise either an analytical or an implementation study for the formal report project. In this video, I'm just going to go over the definitions for an analytical study and an implementation study. I'm going to show you parts of the textbook that you're going to be relying on in preparation for next week's assignment, which is the formal submission of the work plan or the proposal. So each group will need to form their project in the mold of either an implementation or an analytical study. Let's start with an analytical study. An analytical study involves making a short list of solutions that could possibly be used to address the target problem. You will then be comparing these solutions based on predefined criteria in order to recommend one to the target company or organization. So, having identified the company's problem, you will then make a short list of solutions which you will be comparing in order to identify what is the best course of action for that company going forward. You'll also need to define the criteria which you will be using to evaluate those solutions. So, for instance, if a company has a problem, you might think of solution A, solution B, and solution C as possible ways forward. Now, in order to compare these, you will need to define the criteria in advance. One criteria could be the cost benefit analysis. So, which one yields the most benefits for the target company given the costs it would need to incur? So, as you can see, we have the three solutions, and one criteria is cost. Normally, for the length of the project that you will be writing, you would need around three solutions that you would be considering and two or three criteria for evaluation. I think three criteria probably works better because it will be easier to reach the length requirement. Now, alternatively, you could propose an implementation study, which involves describing in great detail the process through which a particular solution can be implemented at the target company and how the problem will be dealt with through this solution. So, in an implementation project, what you will be doing is describing the various phases and sub phases involved in conducting this implementing this particular solution. So you're no longer trying to find a solution. You don't have a short list of solutions to compare, but rather you know in advance what the solution will be, and your job is to describe how it ought to be implemented, justifying and explaining every single recommendation that you make along the way. So basically, you're going to have to factor in the needs, demands, priorities, and expectations of the target company and write a detailed implementation plan that addresses all of these specific contextual elements. This week, you're going to have to complete this discussion forum activity where you will again meet with your teammates to discuss your plans for the formal report. Through this meeting or these meetings, you will determine the type of project. So, are you going to go with implementation or analytical uh, uh, type of project? Next, you're going to begin creating a work plan based on the example provided in the course book. So this is in chapter 11.3, which I will show you in a minute. And then I want you to share your work plan along with your answers to the following questions to the discussion forum. So these are the questions I want you to answer. If you decide to go with an analytical study, then you will answer the questions in this column, this first column here. If you decide to go with an implementation project, then again, a tentative response to the questions in the second column will need to be provided. Let's go over these questions very quickly. If you decide to go with an analytical project, you will need to tell me what are the solutions that you will be comparing, what criteria will you be using to evaluate these solution options, what is your prediction about the likely outcome of the investigation. Remember, when I say what is your solution, you don't have to tell me exactly which one of the solutions will come out on top, but rather what you expect will be the answer given the company's needs, demands, and expectations. So these are the three questions that you will answer for an analytical study. If you decide to go with an implementation project, here are the questions I want you to answer. What solution will you be implementing? So you need to know this in advance. Why have you decided to describe the implementation of this particular solution and not the other alternatives? How many phases or stages do you expect to include in your report? And finally, on what basis will you be describing the process of implementation? For example, will you be following a chronological approach? Will you be grouping the phases based on the aims? More details can be found in the course book and the content from Unit 8. Now, if you want to know more about what needs to go into a work plan or proposal in anticipation of next week's project, I urge you to go to the course book. This is Unit 11, Proposals, which describes in great detail what proposals are and what are the stages in conducting and writing an appropriate proposal. So there's a planning, development, and implementation and completion stage. And then we have the elements of a proposal. What are the main functions that need to be fulfilled in a document of this kind? And examples have also been provided here. So you can see examples in the e-text, how the references are laid out, and it's good to discuss these items and what you will be including in your response to each of these in preparation for next week's project assignment, which is the work plan and proposal. So I hope this is useful, and I look forward to reading and learning more about your projects. Good luck.